think a lot of the nature of what is uprising, that directly correlates to the work that I started with Boys to Black Men.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been having like casual, like one-on-one conversations with like just different kinds of people, whether like friends or people I've associated with. And somebody asked me a question, like, what can I do to, I guess, effect change? And I think that is like a tall order that anyone can ask themselves, is like, what can you do? It's like, we don't, I mean, we can, and what I was advising is that we can make small contributions. Like, for example, like when you see a Black boy, just smile. Like that could be one form of like affirming their identity as they affirm their identity. So if they are walking by with no t-shirt on, smile, or on a bicycle or playing music loud or whatever, like any form of Blackness that doesn't necessarily align with your perceptions of what you think it should look like, just smile at them. And like, it might be awkward at first, but just keep doing it. I think that's like something really, really small that someone can do to affirm them. And also like, just, I mean, you can read um, Ibram Kendi's How to Be Anti-Racist, Stamped are both, I think, two like really seminal texts that someone can pick up. White Fragility, I think, is a good one as well. But I think that was one of the things I left on the table from the last one, is like shifting the conversation into like one of healing, because I've been thinking about like some of the, I guess, spectrum points or whatever of social awareness. Like I've been looking at like how people play different roles. Like some people can be theorists and they're doing the writing and the research. Some people could be the disruptors. Like I would consider myself as a disruptor, like teaching, calling out things. People can be in one breath doing the healing, or like and there's so many different ways to do advocacy work and in combating and dismantling white supremacy.
Yes, I totally agree. And this is something that I've been working on personally in my own life, and I started doing a few years ago, and at least something that stands out in my mind that I noticed the most difference in myself is that I'm from St. Louis, and I had to fill my gas in a part of town that I didn't necessarily feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of not making eye contact with people, I started to make eye contact with everyone that I walked by and saying hi to them. And typically there'd be these like large men that would intimidate me because I'm like, oh, I'm a small woman. And then I would say hi to them, like, hi, good morning. And everyone was always so sweet. And it was just an instantly cure of fear, and just realizing that I was just uneducating myself, and it was easier to be afraid than to approach it and to humanize everyone. And then as soon as you do that, it's like, oh yeah, this is just a person who wanted to get a coffee in the morning at the gas station while I'm filling it.
If we continue to come to, like, when we have these social interactions, to completely disarm all of these preconceived notions that we might have with each other, like I think that is also doing the work to dismantle like these really specific racial dynamics that are products of white supremacy.
Yeah, most definitely. Are you still in contact at all with the boys that you interviewed?
Yeah.
You are? How?
I went to one of them, I went to his drive-by graduation about almost 2 weekends ago. Yeah, we have a picture, but it's just like family now. Like they're part of. I feel like I'm part of their legacy, and they're also part of my legacy now. And I checked on another one last week. Some of the older ones are Kellen, the one is like the pink background.
Yes.
That's one of my favorite ones too. It was just like his face is just so photogenic and just like you could just. I've drawn him so many times. But Kellen is, I think, will be starting grad school. Yeah, so he's finished undergrad. I think he's going to be starting grad school. Jalen, I think, has 2 small kids now. He was purple. He's the one with the purple background. He's doing okay. John, the one that had the flames, John has just graduated too. I went by his like little graduation festivities as well. He will be attending Bowie State. It's an HBCU in Bowie, Maryland. So he's preparing for that. Albert he has a partner, and they seem to be really, really happy, and he's just living his best life. I think he's in Forest City still. Let me see. Tajon, who's the green background, I talked to him the other day. He will be going, I think, finishing, he has a semester to go, something to finish high school.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, he's doing okay. Steve with the yellow background, he's going to a college in North Carolina, I believe. He's going to Benedict College.
Oh, okay.
He's going to Benedict College in the fall. He's doing okay. And Carter of the Pink, I haven't talked to Carter in a few months. I need to check Texas Mom to see how he's doing. But he just graduated as well. They were the class of 2020.
Well, that's amazing, and that's so great that you were able to keep in touch with them. Have you talked to them at all about how their participation in your artwork might have affected, their outlook on themselves, their outlook in their place in society, and also just not even in terms of you painting them and their depictions with all of the eyes, but also just the questions that you asked and if sort of changed their mindset?
Yeah. Not explicitly, but with Jonathan, I think me and Jonathan have had the most conversations about what you're asking. Jonathan, I think, and Steve had mentioned it as too. Steve is one with the yellow background, but they both felt like they were important. So it made, I guess, they felt immortalized in a sense, and also felt like, wow, my face was in the museum. I am somebody important. But we haven't had explicit conversations about the racial climate now and the connections between that and them being painted within those contexts. We haven't had those explicit conversations yet.
Well, if you do, please give me an update. I'll be very
Yeah, I've been trying to keep up with all of them because the ones that I haven't painted who are also like part of the original project and interviews, I still keep up with them, and they're doing okay. It's really interesting to see how they grow and how they turn into men and how they choose to show up in the world. And just like who they choose to be, I think is really interesting.
Yes, I agree completely. It was honestly a very, very inspiring exhibition to see. So that's great to hear that you still have such an intimate relationship with all of them. I remember that during the reception, there was a university student who asked this question, and I'm curious about it myself. Now that we're further down the road, sort of, she asked if you were interested at all in doing depictions of Black girls becoming, Black women, and sort
Mhm.
of those other, issues that we see in generalizations like the sexualization of the Black female body, and all of those things that are very, very loaded. And if you have any interest in exploring those topics, and also sort of how you see your art going now that all of these recent events have transpired with the press. I mean,
Yeah.
I know it's so loaded, it's so much to unpack.
Yeah. Yes. A short answer, yes.
Mhm.
I do think I say yes, also knowing that I feel a little bit in the same shoes as Kehinde Wiley once felt before he did Economy of Grace. His first time painting women ever. Artistically, it's always been easier for me to paint like men and boys because their facial features. It's just an aesthetic bias that I have. They're like more rigid facial features and squarish faces, and they don't have like a lot of. I like the hair, the aesthetic of the hair. So there's like I've had an aesthetic bias of painting boys, but with that question, I was like, yeah, I need to grow and expand outside of that as an artist, and that's kind of like similar to what Kehinde Wiley was doing. Is like for the first time he had to paint hair, and he had to like I don't know, that's a different beast. Like painting hair and strands. Oh goodness. but yes, I do have intentions to expand because a larger population of the students that I've had this year, I've connected with more girls this
Mhm.
year, which is the first time for me. I usually like have stronger connections with the boys, but it's like, yes, I need to represent you in art too. So yeah, to address some of the very specific issues that Black girls are challenged with. So yes,
Yes, definitely.
I
Well,
think that's going to be like, I think that should be the next like iteration. I'm not like a next wave of this kind of work is the focus on the girls.
mhm. So you don't think you're going to create any artwork that's specifically addressed to possibly like Breonna Taylor or George Floyd, but
Mm-hmm.
just continuation along the vein of these interviews. And I think that through your work, you're addressing these specific things, and you don't necessarily need to say, specifically George Floyd or Breonna Taylor, but you're also just addressing the broader issues. But I know that addressing these particular cases, some artists have felt called to do. That's why I asked the question.
Yes, yes, because particularly with Black women and Black trans women or Black trans men, there is this erasure that happens not only in life but in death. So, like,
Mhm.
if you casually just watch any recent conversations on any kind of like broadcasting networks, I think you'll often hear where we speak of like George Floyd, Trayvon Martin, Tremere Rice, Eric Gardner, Sean Bell, like men, but there are many that fail to mention like Sandra Bland, Breonna Taylor, Nina Pop, or like trans women. So like there's been like this subculture of people who are advocating and gathering, and it's something that interests me as well. It's like, okay, well, to for visibility, then I feel responsible as an artist who does this kind of work to also put my hand in the pot.
Yes, yes. And I'm really excited to see what possibly comes out of that. I
Yeah,
actually,
me too. I'm so nervous about it. Hair makes me nervous, so I have to like. That's gonna be an artistic challenge for me. Is to figure out these softer tones where like, and then like no facial hair, so I'll really have to be really precise with my face because I was able to like you're able to kind of like there's a lot of flexibility with like hair, boys having hair on their face and stuff like that. There's a lot of wiggle room, but like with girls, it's different.
It is.
So
It certainly is.
challenging myself right now is like been doing like little sketches of Black women and girls.
Do you think that you would possibly include in that series trans women, the queer community, or maybe have that focused in another series entirely?
I feel like I think it might need its own focus. I was talking to a friend about that last week, and she was asking me why is there this sudden departure of like, okay, Black trans lives or queer people, and I was like, I think it can be equated with people's need to acclaim Black Lives Matter as like it's because it's not. So it's like even within Blackness, there have been like these subdivisions, and because people aren't also exclaiming Black queer lives, trans lives, they usually mean like cis men, cis women. So I do think there are its own issues to even address with creating like this other category to focus on, because there are issues that are very particular to the trans and queer community.
Yes, I obviously don't have any personal experience in that, but I have been able to see it as it's been occurring, and it has been very interesting to see sort of 2014 first wave really of Black Lives Matter, and even going a little earlier, and now we're evolving more into all Black Lives Matter, and that includes special needs, that includes physically handicapped, that includes all types of queer, trans.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, different religions, differently abled bodies, you know, sex workers, because like when those when those women or people die, then it's like we bring in respectability, right? Well, like, okay, that person was this kind of person, so they are undeserving of, I don't know, acclamation, like even after death, or like a acknowledgement, which I think is silly.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I actually I just watched on Netflix, which is silly to bring up, but I did just watch on Netflix Disclosure last night.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was beautiful, and I learned a lot, because I think even within the queer community, there's this expectation that it's all inclusive, and that
it's not, like, even in the queer community, their heteronormativity is still kind of standardized, which is crazy, right? So like if you fit okay, masculine identifying women, okay, it makes sense that you're with a feminine identifying woman. So it's still like there's still those heteronormative dynamics that are at play even in the queer community. And like they're like, sometimes people were like, oh, we shouldn't see two masked women together, or two femme women together, or two manly looking men. It's weird how those dynamics even spill over into queer communities. But then like trans, I've seen even queer people like give trans people side eyes, or not, or like find some kind of way to invalidate their gender identities. So yeah.
Yes. So I am glad to see that with this movement, there are broader issues that are being pulled together, and it's sort of a mass re-education. I'll be very hopeful and interested to see the change that comes from it. So how are you looking at your work and at your personal life moving forward, and kind of what your expectations or hopes are for the aftermath? Because, well, and I say aftermath very loosely, because I'm hoping that this is not just, and I think many people are, it's not just a wave. That's just another crest and then be gone. Just something that's going to keep moving forward.
I think we're starting to see I'm seeing immediate response in music artists and the songs that they are putting out there into the world. I'm seeing other artists also like be in the streets and stuff. And my personally, what I am asking myself is how can I immediately respond? Because there's these works that I'm working on that this requires so much time. And I'm personally searching for a visual language in which I can also use as a tool as like my immediate response to things. So that is something that I'm asking of myself like right now. Because things are just, the world is changing by the day now, right? Like at this moment in time, the world is changing by the day. And I think this is going to be another significant wave in history towards change.
I think that's one of the beautiful things about the modern age with technology and with social media is that you can have a response very quickly. Where I'm seeing a lot of artists where, you know, just within a few days of a news story coming out, they'll have, you know, a beautifully illustrated work that's, you know, protesters holding up signs, and you can buy prints and all of the proceeds will go to donations. But also because of the immediacy, you have the issue like Blackout Tuesday, where people are very quick to do it. They post all these black images, and without knowing the negative consequences, they use the hashtag Black Lives Matter. And there's that self-censoring issue. So there's a positive and there's a negative, and knowing how to navigate those once you act so quickly.
Yeah. So I'm asking questions about format and place. So like how can I respond? But then once I've generated some type of visual image, then where does it need to live? I haven't always been like particular about like social media because I don't want to inadvertently contribute to the co-opting that's happening, but do want to speak, but be very, very aware of what I'm saying. Like, has it already been said? Is me trying to say something like self-serving and egotistic, where like there's so many different illustrations of Breonna Taylor? Is it just something that I'm using as a platform to generate more followers and stuff? So I really am like kind of metacognitive about all of that and making sure that like it isn't just serving me. So I'm trying to figure out those things and like where would my response live. So it's just in gestation.
Yes, yeah, for sure. And I think that in times like this, you know, one of the most common phrases is silence is violence. So people are feeling pushed to make statements and to have their voices heard. And I think that it is important at the same time to evaluate and say, will what I'm saying be productive? Or is it just this push to say something so I don't feel like I'm contributing?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm really self-aware of like optics. So I want to try to make sure that my intentions and what I put out there are fruitful and not self-serving.
Well, knowing your work and just kind of the care that you put into your students and the time that you take to learn personally about them and be invested even thereafter, it's hard for me to imagine. It's hard for me to imagine you being overtly self-serving, but you know, also, I feel like artists are the most critical of themselves. So.
Oh yeah, I really am. Like I've got so many sketches that have never seen social media, like that I'm working on now. Like, I don't know. I it's like I always oscillate between, well, you have a gift or whatever, let people see, just put it out there, whatever, with no expectations. And then I'm like, no, I want to make sure what I put out there is X, Y, and Z. So I don't know. I just need to get over myself and stop just thinking so much about it, I suppose.
And you know what? The beautiful thing is, yeah, you can put it up out into the world and you'd be surprised by people's responses. Because I think that, again, you are the most critical person. So if you post something or make it available for some sort of public ingestion,
Yeah.
surprised by how many people are touched by your work. I'm sure that you were critical of your exhibition in some form or manner. And I mean, I still have, I never threw away one copy of the notes that people wrote in response to your work. And I think it touched a lot of people. They felt very much connected to your work and also to the interviewees. And it made them really think about their life and their experiences and how they've responded to it and what they would do moving forward. And I'll take some pictures and share with you some of the more moving responses. All of them in their own way. But it was a beautiful thing. And I'm sure that whenever you approached the series and what you were going to do, you might have not had those expectations.
I definitely didn't. And I was really excited when I heard that that was going to be happening.
It was a beautiful thing, for sure. And I'm glad that you gave us the opportunity to do that. So let's see. I'm looking at the questions now. Okay, so this is something that I'm very curious about. The question is, what would you tell someone interested in becoming an artist? But I'm particularly interested in sort of what you would communicate to someone who is, you know, a Black adolescent and they're wanting to become an artist and they are wanting to have their voices heard and they are wanting to see more representation in museums and in galleries and in social media. What encouragement you would give them?
I think I would encourage them to ask themselves, why are they making art? I think to start there, and I take this simple approach to many decisions that I make in life, is like to ask yourself why until you can't ask why anymore. So ask yourself, why are you making work? Once I realized, and this is fairly recent, like I've been asking myself why for years, and my purposes have been changing over the years as they shift to align with kind of where I am in life and what I want to contribute to the world. But first, I think I was just wanting to just draw portraits because I just love to, for people to see themselves in art. And that was just like simple aesthetic, like ambition. But then as I became more aware of like social injustice, I then wanted to find a way to leverage my art as a form of protest, as a form of activism. So I had to figure out how my art form could align with that. So like if my main art form is portraiture, then I had to figure out, okay, how do I do this? And then I was like, well, I can present portraits, but also present stories with them. Which seems simple, but it took me a very long time to get there. So like, ding, 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 that's what I can do. Because I was trying to, all right, I need to depict these kinds of scenes and draw this way. But I think the main thing, I had to find a way to make my aesthetic fit with what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. So I kept thinking I had to be this artist or that artist. And while it's good, I think, to know your artist and do your research and have all kinds of inspiration, sometimes I don't look at anything because all of those things just like overwhelm me, and I find myself like trying to be like another artist.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I like definitely, I think it's twofold. So like spending time with your craft, because that is first and foremost important. And even if you don't have the answers today, if you just, I think if develop some form of consistency, and then it will come to you. I think you'll trap the trust that the purpose will come to you. And I think it takes some wisdom sometimes. Like sometimes you'll just have to grow into it or experience your way into like what you actually want to do with your art. But first and foremost is a focus on the craft and getting good at being an artist.
I agree completely. So that kind of bleeds into another question, which is, why art for you?
Why art for me?
Yeah, it's a tough one for sure. Out of all things, out of all forms of activism, out of all forms of communication, out of all ways to spend your time, why art?
I think art is powerful in that I what the immediate thing I can think that comes to mind is what this rapper D Smoke said. He said that great art is polarizing. It's like either like you just got to chew on it for a little while. And I'm really I like to read, and I like to I think put like have really intellectual conversations and stuff. And I like to, I'm a teacher, so like I'm a teacher by nature, and I like to put those things in my art. I like to make people question themselves and the world around them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think like in the way that I make art, by making static images, I think it's something that like can hang inside of someone's mind for a while. Like to some kind of way leave an indelible mark in their memory. So like they can they can put together thoughts with like images. So like if someone saw that the exhibition back in September, someone saw the exhibition back in September, I was like, oh, I remember that time this artist had this and this, and they can conjure up the memories or whatever the messages were. So like that's why it's art for me, because I think it has more immediacy and understanding than like words sometimes. Like an essay or something, I think it's a quick way to get to a person's consciousness.
Yes, I agree completely. And of course, I am in the field, so I am an art lover, but I do think I do associate artworks with memories or periods in my life or that resonated with me. And it's something that you can hold on to and conjure up whenever you're brought back to a moment or you think of a particular thing. So it's beautiful, beautiful sentiment. So are there any other takeaways that you might want listeners to have? Any last thoughts or things that have been on your mind in between sort of our conversations?
I don't know if I was able to say this. I don't remember, but like unpack, evaluating where we sit within the structures of white supremacy, like that's a gargantuan of a concept. But I think a real simple way we can start is like, okay, what is my proximity to systems that don't benefit all or that benefit the majority of one type of group of people? Like, what is my relationship to those systems, or how do I have access to them? And then how can I begin work to challenge them? I was having a conversation with one of my friends, and we were talking about allyship. And I think I remember speaking about how allyship needs to move past sentiment and like, oh, because one of the, I think Hollywood has done is like with all of these movies and stuff is trying to tap into the consciousness and empathy of like the oppressor or whatever. But I think it has to even go beyond that. And me and my friend were talking about how can white people begin to conspire against whiteness. And it's like the conversations that have been floating around, there's been like a shallowness to them in the sense that maybe white families are having conversations about Black people and like trying to justify their humanity. I think those are like, okay, that's cute, it's a start. But then how do we begin to have conversations about how, first of all, how did whiteness even become a thing? Because it wasn't a thing before the 1700s, like the invention of whiteness. And then how has America established systems in which made whiteness the ruling class? Like, how did we as white people get here? I think those are the kinds of conversations that we need to start having to like really unpack privilege, because I'm seeing like radical two responses on like polar opposites. So I've seen white people are saying, oh, okay, looking internally, unpacking, doing the identity work. But then some like, I'm not apologizing for whiteness. I'm not responsible for slavery. That I didn't do it. But while that is true, you still benefit from the systems that were established years ago that were designed to benefit whiteness. So I think those are the conversations that we should be moving towards and like conspiring against these things.
Yes. Yes. Beautiful. Thank you so much. I really appreciate all of your wise and kind words, and I hope that everyone can walk away knowing more about you, knowing more about your work, and then also hopefully knowing more about how to just be a better person walking around in society. I think that we
it's so kind. That's a big responsibility.
Oh, it is. It is. And I think as you were talking about, a lot of it is just, yeah, recognizing microaggressions and being like, why did I do that? And adjusting.
Yeah.
And hopefully we can do that. And I think in the art world, you know, a big part of our job is to not only identify that in our people, in our staffing, the people that join us at the museum, our visitors, but also sure that through our labels and through how we talk about art and also through our representation. So there's a lot of work to do, but I thank you so much for being a part of it all, really.
Thank you, Chaney, for the opportunity and more opportunities